What does the future mean to you?
Well, I'm not going to college because mainly I didn't have the right subjects. So, as far as I know, I'm going into the service.
In other words, then your solution for your education is going to be in the Army. It wasn't in the schools.
That's right.
I don't think I'm going to be going to college because I want to go out west, way out west. And
you're liable to be sent out there.
No, I know that, but how definitely now can you say what you want to be right now?
I don't know what I want to be, but I'm still going to college.
Bonnie?
You are watching a clip from a documentary that ran on primetime television in the fall of 1958. It recorded the students at Harding High School in Bridgeport, Connecticut, who were going to be graduating that spring.
The greatest thing in the world, I think, is to have children.
I'm David Hoffman, independent documentary filmmaker. Bird by my side gives me a little sense of security doing this. And I want to tell you a little bit about what this period was like before you see this incredible documentary where kids and teachers talk straight, real, how they felt. So the time, October 4th, 1958. Something gigantic happened that evening.
Sputnik.
The first artificial Earth satellite in the world has now been created.
We are bringing to you the most important story of this century. Mankind's breakthrough into space. Ladies and gentlemen, we are bringing to you the most important story of this century. Mankind's breakthrough into space. For the first time, mankind has reached for the stars and found them within his grasp.
It flew overhead, and all of a sudden you looked up, if you were my family, and you thought you saw this thing, and it was beeping.
Out of nowhere, here was this first man-made satellite being orbited by our arch enemy. So this was an enormous event. It took you from the realm of theoretical science fiction to reality. It was a reality that human beings could send artificial satellites into space. And that changed everything. It was one of those moments in history where all of a sudden, all of your thought processes changed.
And it was made by the Soviet Union, Russia, our arch enemy. And it was both beautiful, and when the people told us in Washington, oh boy, that means they have an ICBM, the Russians, and they could get us, and we can't protect ourselves. This is really scary.
Sputnik was the 9/11 of our day. People were shocked that Russia had a technology that could do this, and we didn't.
Oh, well, I'd like to know if the people of my generation now have anything to fear by this. There isn't any danger then in something being turned from this missile by your country harming the people of my generation. We don't have anything to fear then.
One meaning, very quickly read from the launching of the satellite, is an ominous one. This is that the Russians have licked some of the toughest problems of rocket propulsion, the basis of the so-called ultimate weapon, the long-range ballistic missile.
Senator, do we have any defense against Russia's intercontinental ballistic missile?
No, we have not.
Within days of that beautiful experience, it became terror. What are we going to do? How did these Russians, who are, we think, primitive relative to us, we're the great science nation, how did they beat us in a scientific venture?
This constitutes the greatest crisis in the history of America.
We are headed downhill to the status of a second-rate world power.
If Russia wins dominance of this completely new area, well, I think the consequences are fairly plain. Probable Soviet world domination.
This was the time that came right before the documentary you're going to see, where the teacher and the students are talking about going to college or not, and about marriage or not. And what happened at that time was really important in terms of education.
Tonight I want to talk to you particularly about this business of education. And when I say education, I mean the problems of education.
Somehow there has to be sort of a switch in concentration, it seems to me, in this country. I think we have to decide whether we want a super fancy kitchen and 500 horsepower under the hood, or whether we want to match the Russians.
We've never been in a greater mess in our lives as a nation.
Here we adults started questioning our educational system. I mean, how come the Russians had scientists and engineers that could do these things and we didn't?
What we've got to do is start right in the high schools and toughen up our scientific education so that we can produce those productive, creative people that we need so badly.
We sent a bunch of politicians, congresspeople, to Russia to find out what are they doing.
What we found shocked us.
30 years ago, we had 6 times as many scientists and engineers as the Soviet Union. Now their colleges are turning out twice as many technical people this year as ours are.
We learned that Russian kids went to school 6 days a week, that their school year was 213 days long compared to 180 days in America, that every Russian kid, boy and girl, was required to take math and engineering. Russian students had up to 4 hours of homework a night, where the average in America was just 30 minutes.
Every town had its little group in charge of kind of improving education, backed by the federal government, lots of money going into schools, going into scholarships.
Scholastic achievement is now recognized and respected by both students and adults.
How do I get high grades? I work for them. I'm not going to school just to put in time. I want to be somebody.
And it was all heavy-duty, college prep, mathematically based. We're going to train scientists. And the curriculum went that way. The courses became very difficult. It was a revolution. It's going to be tough.
We were just loaded down with all kinds of books and new classes and homework.
It used to be, I could get through chemistry and physics. You know, you could slide through. The coach will let me through. But it wasn't that way anymore.
President Eisenhower led this national self-analysis and asked Americans to change how our young people were being educated.
We need scientists. In the 10 years ahead, they say we need them by thousands more than we're now presently planning to have.
Anyone who was around at that time will remember individualized education, no longer rote learning.
Teaching by rote.
1, 2, 3, 4. Put your feet on the floor. 1, 2.
And it was like somebody slammed on the accelerator, and all of a sudden, everything was open for discussion and examination.
We used to laugh and say, well, you know, the Russians might have launched Sputnik, but the United States is launching us because of all of these new programs that were in the school, and we all just jumped into it.
It was just like an avalanche because the response of the United States was to institute this huge science and technology enrichment program.
I went to college on a full scholarship, everything paid. Not only my school, but my room, my board, my car, my food, my books. And just about every school had these, what we used to call rocket boys. They were building little homemade rockets that they could train themselves so they could beat the Russians.
I gathered in some friends that had been my friends all my whole life, and we decided we're going to form a club called the Big Creek Missile Agency, and we're going to build rockets. We had absolutely no clue on how to do this.
I started mixing my own homemade rocket fuel. My mother was very supportive of my experiments. They really weren't rockets, they were pipe bombs with fins.
We blew up a lot of things. We dodged a lot of shrapnel. We just felt someday what we were doing was going to help the United States to be #1 in space. We wanted our country to catch up with the Russians, and then we wanted to just keep on going forever.
So this is a time where schools are desperately trying to get students to go to college. At the time, maybe 6 or 7% of students went to college. And what was the alternative? Well, for guys, it was go out and get a job. And lots of people did. Most students did. For women, it was get married. If you're not married, by the time you're like 21, 22, you were called an old maid. There was a lot of pressure on girls to marry. You're going to hear both these discussions. The teacher pushing the students, go to college. Why don't you go to college? The students pushing back, and some of the girls questioning marriage, and other girls saying, gotta get married, gotta get married. School's nice, but I gotta get married.
Class of 58.
We have all kinds of kids here, a good number of them above average in intelligence and aptitude. And it is with these that we are concerned today. Students like Ted Jardis, co-captain of our football team, Barbara Hutchinson, head of the cheerleader squad, David Butker, editor of the yearbook. I imagine every high school has its student hangout. For the boys and girls at Harding, Bunny's is a second home. Here, everything is discussed, including the future.
So many kids engaged, some are getting married right after they get out of high school.
Yeah. Who's getting married right after high school?
Carol.
Carol is?
Yep.
Oh,
She's graduating early in June. At the end of June, she's getting married.
Yeah? And what are they planning on doing then? I mean, is he working?
Oh, yeah, he's working. He's out of school.
Oh, then he hasn't gone to college or anything?
No.
Oh, boy.
He's older than she is.
Yeah. Don't you think that's kind of silly, though?
What's wrong with getting married?
Nothing's
Yeah, you want to be an
wrong.
old maid?
No! But I just think it's kind of silly to get married right after high school. I mean, she's only going to be, what, 18?
I don't know if she's going to be that old.
We'll see,
Not
even
much
still.
more.
Yeah. I don't know. I should think they'd want to wait just a little while, at least plan for it.
At least then after, I mean, if they wait a year or two, they'll have something to start with, even though he is working now. He doesn't, don't forget he's got, he'll have a family to support then.
What about you, Barb? You planning to go to college?
Gee, I really don't know yet. I'm not sure.
What does the future mean to you? Anybody? Go ahead.
Well, I'm not going to college because mainly I didn't have the right subjects. So, as far as I know, I'm going into the service. Try and pick up an education in the Air Force.
In other words, then your solution for your education is going to be in the Army. It wasn't in the schools.
That's right.
Dave?
Well, I don't think I'm going to be going to college because, well, my marks haven't been quite up to par. I want to go out west, way out west, and
You're liable to be sent out there.
You have to be a cowboy. I want to go out and be a plain, ordinary dirt farmer and get my living from the soil. I like it a lot. I think I'm suited for it.
How about the rest of you?
Well, I'd like to go into business administration, possibly sales engineering if possible. I'm interested in meeting and talking with people, and I think that's my interest right now.
Barbara?
By the time you graduate high school, you're only about 18 or 19 years old. And personally, I don't think anyone is actually ready to go out and face life. I mean, not that you're not ready to face life, but if you go and, as most kids who graduate at 18, a lot of them go out and get married within a year or two, and there you are. You're all set up for life. That's the way you've got to live. And you haven't any further education, and that's the only preparation you're going to have. And you, as far as I can see, most people stay around this vicinity wherever they're living, and that's the way they're going to be for the rest of their lives.
Well, in other words, this early marriage business, you can't see
I
that.
definitely feel that way.
This is what you've been brought up for.
That's right.
To get married?
At our age?
To get married. I mean, the greatest thing in the world, I think, is to have children.
Miles.
Miles, I don't... how do you know all this, Miles? I've just watched people and the way they're way towards children, the way they bring up children, different ways. And I think it's the best thing in the world because we had to be brought up too. I mean,
I don't think you should mix marriage and a career. If you're going to go to college and have a career and then decide to get married, I mean, after all, it's not fair to your husband, or even if you had children, it's not fair to mix a career up to be out of the house
What do you
all the
say should
time.
be done? In other words, if you have a career, don't marry.
Well, no,
That's
not
what
all
she's
the time.
saying.
It depends on the kind of career you have.
Well, give me, for instance, Sheila, I want to know these things.
It would be something that would keep you away all day. I mean, what's the use of having children?
What if a woman is talented and she has something to offer, and that don't you think that it's really her duty to give something to society, that she should really help society?
I think it's just as much her duty to take care of her children.
I believe also if you have children, you should stay home with them.
Oh.
But I'm speaking that I feel that when you're 18, that you're not ready just to go out and end up getting married. I think marriage is the final thing that you should be looking forward to. And by going to college, you prepare for this also.
Many of you, even when, as far as you know, are definitely going to college. May I see a show of hands, please? Okay? How many of you would like to go, but because of financial reasons, let us say, are not going? That's 3 more. And how many of you are not going to college? Now, this is interesting because of this reason. During our conference meetings, we've been taking test after test after test. And these tests have proved conclusively now. And when I say tests, I mean intelligence tests, tests that will show your mathematical abilities, your scientific aptitudes, whether you would be good in other types of fields. There's not one of you who has an IQ lower than 120. You have the aptitudes, you have the abilities. You can be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a journalist, you can even be a teacher. That's all over now. Nevertheless, we have here a group of 9, and only 3 are going to college. And if this were just Harding High that was involved, then the problem would be a minor one. But the point is this trend is all over the country. In other words, in the average high school in the United States, only 1/3 of those who should go to college do go to college. Now, what is the reason for this waste? And I think that we have to consider that it is a waste.
Mr. Schneider, why, if they stress education in college so much, really, why does it have to be so expensive?
I think that the fault is with the public, because they take the responsibility for public education through high school, even though they may not want to, but they don't realize that it's necessary for them to take the responsibility for education through college for the people who are qualified and the people who need it. They want to have a better society, but they're not willing to do anything about it in giving education. They want to go ahead and build more rockets and all this, but they're not willing to do anything about it.
I told you, I don't know definitely what I want to be. But maybe after being out for a year or so, I might decide.
Do you think that just doing nothing, all of a sudden one day something's going to pop right into your
No,
head?
you go to a job and then maybe you don't like it, that kind of job.
But you can't try out every job. If you just
No, I know that.
But if you went to college, in college you could take different courses that are related to different fields. And then it would give you, you'd get a broader knowledge of all the different fields just by sitting around. You can't try out all the jobs, and all of a sudden you're not going to...
No, I know that, but how definitely now can you say what you want to be right now?
I don't know what I want to be, but I'm still going to college.
Bonnie,
What?
which would you rather, go to college and have the trial and error method there, wasting your money, or get out in the world?
But David, you're saying that college is wasting money. Anything you learn, when you learn something, is that waste?
Well, not if you're not going to use it for your future.
But how can you tell what you're going? Everything you learn, you always have to use. You always use what you learn.
What's waste, Dave? I wish you'd explain
Well,
that to me.
now say a person wanted to go into liberal arts, and they went to a liberal arts college and they got to their junior year, and then, well, if it was a fella, say he decided to become an engineer. Those liberal arts really wouldn't help him in his occupation or his career.
David, if you were going to be a baseball player, would you take just baseball during you'd take baseball during college and you wouldn't learn anything else?
I would, because the reason I'd take baseball was to make myself so proficient in that field.
Then what if you broke a leg?
Well,
then you wouldn't know anything else.
That's not the point.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. Very good point.
Well, if that's the case, what's the Well, what's liberal arts going to get you when you're halfway through college and you leave it off for something else, and then you break a leg in that field? What do you do then?
Dave, you're just talking about material gain. You're not talking about just for learning, the sake of learning. Is that wrong? I don't think that that's waste.
That's right, because you can, for materialistic things, they can be taken away from a person, but anything you learn, that's yours. No one can take that away from you.
Just what does liberal arts do? I mean, what is the field of liberal arts? I mean, we all don't know what it is. It's just one big thing.
To take courses in science and literature and languages, mathematics. You sample every different field. It's not really specializing.
I think Norma, that it contributes actually to a person as a human being. In other words, it's a person as a living person, not just concentrating as you're suggesting, Dave. I think that we concentrate, right? You're going to be a farmer, and all you're interested in is dirt farming and nothing else, right? And this is your attitude, that there isn't anything else that you have to know. This is what you're saying.
Well, tell me this: what good is it going to do you to know that you know all about Shakespeare and his contemporaries? It doesn't get you anything. It doesn't get anybody any enjoyment, because I know for a fact that 99% of the students hate Shakespeare.
David.
You've hit me right here.
You're just talking about yourself, David. You're assuming that everybody else hates Shakespeare. Why don't you say, I don't? Why don't you say, I don't like Shakespeare? Don't say that 99% of the students don't like Shakespeare.
Well, don't everybody say that anyhow?
No, I enjoy Shakespeare very well.
The point is I don't.
This is news to me.